you're going to see a bunch of young bucks. It's easy to get discouraged because you're not seeing those big mature bucks, but those big bucks are hitting the food sources. So they're not traveling very much. Hey man, be patient. It's all about patience. Don't go gung-ho, moving cameras and doing all that stuff. It's like, I promise you, they're going to start traveling.
Say you've done a good amount of preseason scouting. What happens when season opens and then boom, people are on that spot and they're hunting it and it's like getting pressured? What do you do?
That's a good question.
Welcome back to the Ozark Podcast. It is early season in the Ozarks, and the whitetail are starting to do their thing. They're doing some pre-rut action. Hopefully, you guys have already gotten out and done some hunting if you're into archery and just love the outdoors. It's now is the time. And so to dive in, what we did last week was we talked private land tactics. We talked with the Summers brothers and kind of gave you some flavor of like, here's how these guys get it done on private. But we wanted to, always go back to public too, because we know there's a lot of guys who love chasing whitetail in public. Oh, yeah. And it's not always easy archery season. You're probably going to make, 4 mistakes to the one thing that you get right, especially early on. So to kind of help speed that learning curve, we've got with us Ethan Kemna of Genuine Pursuit.
That's right. Yes,
and I was just talking to him and I was like, man, trying to figure out, what's your thing? What do you like to do? Is it public? Is it urban? And what did you say? You were just like, I just like deer hunting, man.
Yeah, it's, I'm a deer guy. I'm not a public guy. I'm not a private guy. I'm a deer guy.
Yeah.
Whatever I can do to hunt a mature buck, that's what I'm doing.
Heck yeah.
And I've done it all. You
Yeah.
know, and, hopefully for many more years to come, but.
Heck yeah. Well, we're excited to have you on. Real quick, do you want to kind of give people a flavor of what Genuine Pursuit is and how we kind of got connected?
Yeah. So GP really just started as just a hobby thing. I killed a really good buck in Rogers, Arkansas, and it got a lot more attention than what I could ever imagine. It was my biggest buck to date. Took it down to Little Rock. I think he was the second biggest archery buck down there for that year. But it pretty much took off from there. I got back home and I had people reaching out to me asking questions and, what did I do and this and that. And, they couldn't believe it was an Arkansas buck. And I got all kinds of messages. But from there, I was just like, if I'm going to do this for fun, because I've hunted my whole life. I was just like, I'm gonna create a group of people, like-minded people that let's get out there and just have fun. So Genuine Pursuit, and genuine, that's my favorite word.
Okay.
So genuine pursuit of whatever you do in life.
Yeah.
That's kind of how I thought of it.
I like that.
Yeah.
Heck yeah.
Yeah. So the guys that I brought on, that's kind of how I told them too. I was like, look, we're gonna be up front. We're gonna try to film stuff. We're gonna teach. And then we're going to learn from other people. And that was the only goal from Genuine Pursuit. And then it took off from there.
Yeah.
And here we all are today working with, a bunch of people, a bunch of great people, meeting guys like you. And it just continues to bless us. So,
yeah.
That's awesome.
Love it.
Heck yeah, man. That's cool. It's always cool to hear the origin stories of like, man, you follow these guys maybe on YouTube or on social media. And you're like, how'd you get started? Like, what happened?
What was that road like?
Yeah.
It's really fun in like 10 years when somebody comes back and listens to this and they're like, oh, I remember them in their origin.
Mm-hmm.
And now who knows what we're all doing.
Yeah.
That's
man.
just the coolest.
There's no telling the next 5 years.
Yeah.
But.
And you're from the Ozarks too. You grew up in Green Forest, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yep. Green Forest, Arkansas, town, just shy of 3,000 people.
Yeah.
Chicken town.
There you go.
Big buck town.
Did you
That's right.
did you grow up like knowing, like having an idea of like, I'm in the Ozarks, like I'm an Ozark Mountain man, or was it kind of like later on that you were like, I'm an Ozarker? Like,
man, growing up, I knew it was always a unique place.
mm-hmm.
Working in Eureka Springs, just being around those parts. But My parents, they were always separate. So, I'd go to Missouri, come to Arkansas. I got to see two different worlds, but it was always my home down here,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, in the hills, man,
Yeah.
you can't beat the hills. And the more you get out in them, the more you learn. That's what, like when I was growing up, we didn't really play video games, right? We had BB guns. We were country kids. Took care of cows and chickens and, did hay. But for fun, you went and explored the hills.
Yeah.
There's nothing like the Ozark Mountains, man. And I've been in the Rockies. I've been wherever you can think, East Coast, West Coast, but I don't know. I've always felt, this is my home, Ozark Mountains. There's nothing like it.
Yeah, dude.
Nothing like
It's got a pull to it for sure.
Yeah.
Keeps you here, brings you back if you leave.
Right. And you've got everything here, especially if you're an outdoorsman, right? So if you grow up doing that, kind of like what we did, it's always going to hold a special place in your heart. Trout fishing, whatever it may be, hunting these whitetail. I mean, it's a great place.
Yeah.
Love it.
It is.
Love
Heck yeah,
it.
man.
How old were you when you killed your first deer?
I was 9 years old.
Okay.
Yep. And I killed
with your dad, granddad?
Yeah, with
one of
my
those stories?
dad. Actually, I remember it like it was yesterday, man. We rolled out there for youth hunt. I was shooting my grandpa's single shot 243.
Oh, yeah.
Killed a doe and a small 4-point buck. Laid them both down. And there was a bunch of deer out in our cornfield, but it was awesome.
And you're hooked from then on.
Oh, yeah. Oh, it was well, I think I was hooked before then.
Even before that.
Because my dad would take me.
Yeah.
I've been going since I was 4 years old, but he would take me. I'd fall asleep, because, little.
Yeah.
He would shoot the gun, like across me.
Yeah.
Wouldn't even wake up. He'd say, hey, I shot a buck.
Yeah.
Be like, oh, heck yeah. Then I was up, and we'd go drag this deer out. And, man, I just loved it,
Oh, that's cool, man.
It's such a family-oriented thing.
Yeah.
Loved it.
Absolutely. So sweet, man. Let's dive into it. I'm excited to get into this one. We're talking about early season here. So to talk about early season, to talk about pre-rut, what are we talking about there? Like, let's define that a little bit for anyone who's listening.
Yeah. So
Let's start with the time frame.
Sure. Yeah. So for me, what I've learned is really, beginning of season, late September, all the way till probably mid-October, maybe even a little later. That's your preseason.
Okay.
That's when food sources, acorns, all that, or acorns as we call them around here. That's what you're focusing on more during that time before that pre-rut. That pre-rut is, your third, fourth week of October on, and then rut into November.
Yeah.
That's kind of how I define it.
Okay.
And what I've seen.
Okay,
But,
gotcha. And then within that, like, to call it, early season pre-rut, like what are the behaviors that you're kind of observing or would be able to see in deer if you're watching trail cams, if you're putting boots on the ground and you're sitting in the stand? What are you kind of observing?
Sure. So what I like to tell, especially new hunters, and you're getting trail cameras out on public and everything, you're going to see a bunch of young bucks, right? You're going to see those 1, 2, 3-year-olds, 3-year-olds, you're getting into some pretty good deer. That's when, like, it's easy to get discouraged because you're not seeing those big mature bucks unless you're in their home range in that area. But those big bucks are hitting the food sources, right? So they're not traveling very much. They're staying in their area if the food source, deems so. Like if we've got a good acorn drop that year like we did this year.
Right.
They're staying home, They've got what they need in those areas. You're not going to see them traveling on cameras. If you've got a bunch of cameras out, they're not going to be hitting in front of them that much. So it's that time of the year that they get discouraged. I'm like, hey, man, be patient.
Yeah.
It's all about patience. Don't go gung-ho, moving cameras and doing all that stuff. It's like, I promise you, once that acorn drop like gets done and they're finished with those browse and stuff like that, they're going to start traveling. They've got to find more food. Before pre-rut, food is king. That's all there is to it. You find your food sources, you find how they travel, and you'll find them eventually. It's all about patience, especially on public land where you can't feed or anything like that.
Right.
Private here, it's a feed state.
Yeah.
You can dump feed, but public, you just got to be patient with it
Mhm.
and really learn your area. And that might take a couple years. You're not going to go out there normally and boom, learn an area right off the bat. I mean, it took me a couple years, like this buck right here. It took me a couple years to learn that area.
Yeah.
And it does for most people.
Okay.
You know, and sometimes you get lucky. You roll out there and you sit, and boy, booner comes by. Not very often.
Yeah. You hope for those to happen more often, but
That's
usually
right.
it doesn't happen that way.
That's right.
I had a buddy who got into hunting last year for the first time. So we were on the phone like every other week starting in May, probably.
Yeah.
Like, I got a bow. All right, now I've got the stuff. Now I'm getting into it. And he was all worried about, I'm not going to get to kill a big whitetail this year. And I'm like, no, you probably aren't.
Yeah.
Like, that's fine.
That's okay.
Learn how to
okay.
do it. Anyway, he strikes out in public, finds this spot. There's deer all over. He's like, I think I found a spot. He's like, telling me what's going on. I was like, yeah, man, I think you're in the spot. Ends up killing a huge,
There you
huge
go.
deer first season.
Yeah,
year.
but he stuck with it.
He did. Well, he also just happened into it.
Well,
But now he's learned. So he's like, I've got this spot and I'm going to keep finding more.
Exactly.
But you're right. He stuck with it. But I was like, dude, that's called beginner's luck. I don't know what that is. Like, I know your woodsmanship is growing, but you also just found a spot.
yeah, and
And
that's
it
great.
worked, and it's awesome.
We're happy for those.
So it can
guys.
happen.
Absolutely.
But for the vast majority of us, me included,
Yeah,
we need to listen to you.
It doesn't
and say,
happen.
you got to go look for the spot.
man, I'm going to tell you when I started public land hunting, I had hunted private, most of my life,
Mhm.
and I was in college when I started public land because that's all I had
Mhm.
at the, down there.
Yeah.
But it took me how long? I think 2 years before I killed one.
Yeah.
But before that, I had seen like a couple does. I didn't even see a buck. But that just proven point. It's like you get out there and it's like it's so easy to get discouraged.
Mhm.
But for me, growing up that way and loving it so much, it's just like, man, it's not the deer doing something wrong. It's me doing something wrong.
Yeah.
So then you learn,
Mhm.
and if you don't, then that's okay. You
Yeah.
go back to doing what you're doing.
Yeah. You're like, there's nothing else I'm gonna do, so I might as well stick this out.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna pick up golf or tennis.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm not that guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Heck yeah.
Yeah.
So one other thing I was going to ask you about, just like deer behavior, when you're talking about, they're keyed into their home range, they're
Yeah.
staying close to food sources, they're not having to go that far. How have you seen them kind of using, like scrapes and rub lines and stuff like that? Are you keyed into things like that at all in the early season and pre-rut or?
Yes. Especially like your scrapes.
Okay.
I will say they'll hit them every now and then before the season, like before most of the time. Ours is September 20, whatever
Mm.
it may be set at. I'll have them hit them every now and then before that. But like a week after the season starts is when into October a little bit, is when I really see them. I mean, rubbing those glands all over and,
Mhm.
really heating those up. So that's kind of what I've noticed over the years.
Yeah.
But, I mean, heck, I know I use Branch Boss
Mhm.
out there and
Yeah.
and that helps a lot.
Shout out to Rustin.
Yeah, shout out to Rusty and Rustin.
Yeah.
But that stuff helps a lot just to stop them, and get them on there. But if you go out there, man, you can pee in those things, and it's really just the moisture, heating it up.
Mhm.
Mhm.
But that'll get them going too. But as soon as they start rubbing those glands on those branches and scraping and everything, it's money, man.
Yeah.
You're gonna have other other deer come through there,
Okay.
even does.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Does will hit those scrapes too like crazy.
Mhm.
But that just adds to that community. And that's how they talk to each other, really.
So is that a part of something that you're looking for? And as we kind of move this conversation into like scouting,
Yeah.
what is that one of the things that you look for as you're going out and putting boots on the ground?
Yeah. So, yes and no.
Okay.
So you'll find scrapes, and you might find a whole like 10 of them in a row, right? Maybe 20 yards apart. That might be at nighttime.
Mhm.
And that's part of getting cameras out there and learning what time of day they're coming through, their temperature. I mean, there's so many things that go into that. But some of that, I know some guys see that and they're like, they get all excited.
Yeah.
It's like, just remember, they may be hitting those at night.
Right.
So that's just part of the learning process too.
Yeah. Gotcha.
Yeah.
But then it sounds like you're kind of more focused on like food sources
Yeah.
in the early season. And so
Yes.
it's like maybe a combination of, okay, I've got scrapes. I know there's deer in here. There's an active population.
Exactly.
Now from here, how can I kind of work my way out and find some good food sources where I think there might be a big buck?
Exactly.
Okay.
And that's the thing, like you can see scrapes, and going back to the nighttime thing, that's great. You know they're in the area, but if they're hitting it at night, that doesn't help you
Yeah.
during the day. So where are they going to be bedding coming into that morning feed,
Mhm.
right? Because early season, that's what it's about. They're going to be hitting those browse when the acorns are gone. Those are the areas that you need to find, right?
Mhm.
So mountain deer, especially, we're talking about the Ozarks, they have such a wide range. You may catch a deer that has a weekly route or a bi-weekly route. They might not be hitting that every day. Most of the time, they don't hit a spot every day. So the part of the early season, that's why it is kind of hard to hunt them early season.
Yeah.
But food is king early season.
Mhm.
Okay.
So and the right area of food. So I know, like, let's say you have a whole group of white oaks that most of the time they hit the white oaks first, other than the reds. If there's a whole bunch of them and they're all spread out, how are you going to know which one to hunt?
Yeah.
Right? That's all about getting out there and sitting and seeing how the deer do. It's always better when there's one.
Right. Yeah.
You
Like
know?
the limited resource is right there.
Yeah, there's only one place for them to go. So that's another thing to pay attention to.
Okay.
So it's like you go into an area, it's like, oh man, there's so many white oaks in here. Well, that's great, but where are they going? So
Yeah.
so looking on the ground, seeing the shells, like picking up where they're at that time, if it's fresh, if it's old, all that stuff,
Yeah.
paying attention to.
Gotcha.
And that's just getting out there and learning it, though. Like, you've just got to get out there and see it.
Yeah.
So
talk me through then, like coming into the season, a lot of guys who really public land hunt hard, like a big part of the scouting happens before the season even starts. So there's a big aspect of that. But then, when you're talking about food sources, it's not always easy to identify what the food source is going to be, when you're going in July and August. And so how do you tie those two things together in like your playbook?
yeah, so if you're in an area long enough, it's like the acorns this year. Like, we had good rain, right? So we knew that they're probably going to be a good drop. Last year it was the opposite. There wasn't a big drop. So what are they going to be hitting? Browse. Look at all the browse on the ground, see the leaves picked off. That's how you're paying attention to that.
Yeah.
And it just, for new hunters, I always recommend doing some scouting the whole year. So, like, you're seeing things change and how they change, keeping track of how things in that area are developing and everything. So that's why, like, in a new area, like where this buck was at, taking me a couple of years to learn it, I was out there. I mean, I wasn't out there too much, but I was out there enough in each part of the season of the year to see, like, what's it doing right now? How are these deer traveling at this time of the year? How are they changing at this point of the year? So it's time consuming, but it's just something that I think is crucial, to putting yourself in a good situation.
Yeah. Yeah. If you want to have that success, you got to put in that time.
You got to put in the work, man.
You're just describing good woodsmanship.
Right.
I mean, I know everybody talks about that. And it's like, well, no gear replaces that, or no whatever replaces good woodsmanship.
Yeah.
But it really does boil down to get out in the woods.
Get out in the woods.
And learn, even if you don't know how to look for what they're eating or where they're going or what they're doing, learn how to look for it.
That's right.
And then spend some time doing it. Like, you'll be surprised, especially in the Ozarks, where there's a really healthy deer population, how much you can learn just by what the doe are doing. That you're watching 60 yards off from a stand the first couple of sits.
You can learn a lot from doe.
You can. And we'll talk about that here in a second. All the way to, I mean, you're getting into it and you're finding your first rub or your first scrape. And you're like, I've heard about these. People talk about this. This means something. You're like, it does. It means something. Like, you're in a good area, all that kind of stuff.
Get you excited.
It's fun. I love that we get to deep dive into this stuff, especially on a platform like this where we get to talk to a bunch of people about their strategies.
Yeah.
But I'm always tempted to just throw out there again for the people who are tuning in for the first time, going, I'm getting into deer hunting. Go get in the woods.
Get in the woods.
Yeah.
Go learn.
Go
it's
learn.
the best schooling.
Yep.
It's
And it's the
best
most
schooling.
fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's way fun.
Absolutely.
Heck yeah.
What are some of your main tools for scouting? Like when you kind of think about your arsenal of things that you do and tools
That's a
that
good
you
question,
use.
Kyle.
Yeah.
What do you go to?
Yeah. So I'm not even going to start with like the map stuff. Get a good pair of boots. Like, especially in the Ozarks, got a lot of rocks.
Mm-hmm.
Get a good pair of boots. Like, I cannot stress that enough.
What do you wear?
Well, I'm trying a new boot. They're called Nord of 8s.
Okay.
I've taken these things out west and hunted with them, and they're the best boot I've ever worn.
Really?
Yeah, especially for the money, and they're the most comfortable.
Ooh.
Yeah, they're pretty awesome.
That's the trifecta,
I'll-
right? Best,
I'll,
good on the money, and the
Right.
What did you say? Most comfortable?
yeah, they withstood all the cactus and stuff out west.
Oh,
I mean, it
right.
was awesome.
Yeah, it's a good boot.
We were chasing muleys, like,
Mhm.
and I was like, heck yeah, I love these things. I'll have to give you the link.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, I like them, but yes,
So
good boots.
Good pair of boots.
Yep. Good pants too, like what I'm wearing right here.
Yeah.
Like jeans are great, but get you something that breathes because it gets humid as all get out there.
Yeah.
And then when it comes to my phone, I use Onyx a lot.
Mhm.
Spartan Forge every now and then. It just kind of depends on what I'm trying to use. Mostly Onyx.
Yeah.
Um,
What does I haven't used Spartan Forge. Why do you pick one versus the other?
so Spartan Forge I use mostly for private.
Okay.
But just because of the color coding and stuff like that. But
Okay.
for Onyx, I recommend that for public.
Yeah.
It just shows.
Oh yeah.
It shows so much. You know, all your contour lines and your mix matched maps and everything. That's usually what I pinpoint mine on there. And I'm like, before I go out to any place, I do scouting. Like I'm gonna see what features are out there. I mean, you have to get out there, but.
Mhm.
But do your homework before you step out on the actual land. You
Yeah.
know? So see what kind of features you got, what pinches you got, what looks like, you know, what is looking good at that time, feature wise. So like your benches and I mean all kinds of stuff. And here in the Ozarks we have everything,
Mhm.
and we have multiple of everything.
Right.
So you find your key points. You go check them out. If not, you're going to be walking all over the place.
Mm.
I mean, it's easy to walk 10 miles in a day here, and it doesn't, you know, on the map, it doesn't seem like it, but you're doing this number and
dude,
you're
just
going up and
down.
down. And
Yeah, it's not like walking on a track. It's
Yeah, and
rocks and boulders and
you don't have to go to the gym.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Right. So,
Just take off in the woods.
oh man, I've had so many days like that. You get back and you're just like, oh my gosh. I've been to where like I take my dog sometimes.
Yeah.
He lays down. He's like, Dad, I'm not doing it
I
anymore.
quit.
I'm done.
Yeah.
You can carry me, but I'm
He's
done.
like, don't bring me back here, Dad.
Yeah.
Let's get out of here and never again.
I'm not finding any more sheds for you.
Yeah.
but yeah, it's just, you know, that's kind of my tools
Okay.
when I get out and look at a place.
Yeah, gotcha.
Yep.
One more on scouting that I was kind of wondering about.
Yeah.
Say you've done some like a good amount of preseason scouting, and you're like you've kind of identified some spots that you're like feeling confident about. You've got some cameras up. You're seeing some deer that you want to chase after. What happens when season opens and then boom, people are on that spot and they're hunting it and it's like getting pressured? How do you adapt in season to then either change your game plan or like I got to get there early to that spot? What do you do?
Yeah, so that's a good question. Of course, when that first happens, you know, it's always going to throw you off.
Yeah.
Because you don't know what other people are going to do, right?
Mm.
What I do is I try to see if there's something, because when you're watching cameras and stuff like that, you're seeing directions of deer, things like that. Okay, this guy's sitting here. Where can I go cut this deer off if he comes through here?
Mm.
You know, he's normally traveling east, you know,
Mhm.
wherever. How can I, you know, where can I go sit to cut this deer off when this guy is taking this spot?
Mm.
That's how I think.
Gotcha. So you kind of stick to the scouting that you've done, and you're calling that like, man, I've put in the work. I know what's going on here. I figured this out. I don't really want to go check out a new spot necessarily. I'd like to give this place a try and figure out a different way to hunt it.
Normally, that's what I do.
Okay.
Yeah, if you've
Gotcha.
put so much work into a place, especially like if we're talking about bow hunting,
Mhm.
man, that's such a close quartering thing that there's there's not much room for error.
Yeah.
So if another guy is 400 yards away from me, that doesn't really affect me,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-mm.
So I'm not going to change my whole game plan just because someone's sitting there.
Yeah.
So
Gotcha.
that's my input on that.
I like that. It's kind of an interesting, because that's one of the things that you kind of run into on public is naturally eventually you're gonna run into a guy who's like hunting where you want to be,
100%.
and then you're like, oh shoot, what am I gonna do? Do I just try a new place and just try to go in, get lucky on a new spot, or do I like try to figure out a different
And I'm
tactic here?
gonna tell you too, you'll have guys that walk in later
Mhm.
and it'll pass right by you. Don't get down and get discouraged. Stay in the tree, because I promise you, like those deer, they'll come right behind people. I've seen it,
Yeah.
and it's crazy. You're just like, dude, that guy just came through here like 2 minutes ago, and here comes a deer.
Mhm.
They're used to it.
Oh yeah,
like people
yeah.
are just in here at
Yeah.
this point. Yeah,
But they know how to survive.
they do.
And they know, like, oh, he's already gone. Like, I can come through here, no
Mhm.
problem. I've seen it many times.
Yeah. It's funny. I had just this last weekend, I went out with a buddy and we were on public and we were hunting, and we creep in the dark. We get to a spot where we feel like it's good. We've done some e-scouting. The guy I was with, he'd actually been there before,
There you
and
go.
we climb up the tree. We get set there, and like the sun comes up, and in between the tree he's in one tree, I'm in another tree. There's a hang-on stand right in the tree. Of all the places, of all the acres on this thousands of acres of public land, we're all in the right, in the same spot. And
Yeah.
so, when you find a good spot, that's the thing. Other people know too.
Oh, yeah.
If they know what they're doing, they're gonna be there too. So
Did that guy roll in?
no, he didn't hunt that
Okay,
day.
that's good.
It was just like, oh, there's
Yeah.
a stand right in between us.
A lot of hunters think alike.
Yeah.
They do. And that goes to another point too, of when you're finding big deer on public, think a little differently. Kind of like earlier, I was talking about those overlooked spots, right? So guy going super deep into, whatever public you're on, it's like, you're kind of reading stuff. It may only be 100 yards from where you parked.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't have to trek miles and miles and miles in. Most of the time these big deer survive because they're in those pockets
Yeah.
that no one goes to.
Mhm.
I mean, that's what this guy did. Like I was telling you, I don't even know if he's 300. I don't even know if he's 300 yards from where I parked.
Off the parking. Wow.
Yeah. So that just goes to show, you don't have to hike. You're not Western hunting. You don't have to hike 10 miles
Yeah.
back
No.
for an elk, or anything like that.
Right.
So
That makes sense.
yeah.
I got
All right.
one more scouting question.
All right.
You'd mentioned you can learn a lot from doe. So this is like in the stand scouting.
Gotcha.
What are you learning from doe when you're in the stand?
Yeah. So what I'm learning for doe, normally that goes for like your rut time.
Yeah.
Where the doe are traveling. So doe, they're not going to change very much.
Mm-mm.
They're going water, food. They're kind of staying in that same point. But where they're going, most likely is where that buck's going to go during rut most of the time.
Yeah.
That's what you're learning from does.
You kind of stow that information away in the back of the brain.
That's right.
All right, this might be a good
Yep.
rut spot.
And two, does if you watch does, you'll find a lot of food source that you overlook.
Yep.
When they're browsing on the ground and stuff like that, you're gonna learn a lot from that. Like, okay, I didn't know they were hitting that.
Yeah.
But you're watching them dig under the leaves and stuff
Mhm.
like that. Oh yeah, as long as they don't catch you, does are great.
Yeah.
Yeah,
All right, let's switch gear to. I want to talk kind of gear and setup.
sure.
A big part of public is the mobile thing has gotten huge in the last several years, and I feel like everyone's going that way, and you have to, if you want to be on the freshest sign and properly hunt public when things are changing, like we're talking about throughout the
Yeah.
season, the mobile setup is key. So just curious for you, what goes into your pack and what do you pack in with your, all of your equipment?
Sure. So first, I've always got my Buzzard Roost saddle with me, my 2-panel saddle, because I can sit all day in that thing, right? I have that. I have it's a smaller pack, but I always have an extra pullover just in case. You never know when it's going to change. I always have my grunt tube with me. Just, I always have branch boss in there. You never know when you're putting another scrape or something out. And then I have my lightweight sticks with me. I usually carry 4 with some 8ers on them. Now that's what I carry. I know my buddy Hunter, he does 1 stick. I don't know if y'all have heard of 1 sticking.
Yeah, I have.
So that's like a whole nother deal, which he's supposed to teach me.
The hardcore guys.
That's right. Yeah. I guess I'm not as hard as
like I can't carry in 3 more pounds.
Yeah,
like good for you, bro.
Least amount of ounces.
Yeah.
No, I actually respect the 1 stick guys.
Yeah.
Oh,
no joke.
man. But I mean,
it's cool.
Once you think about it, though, it's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Because you only carry 1 stick in there, and
That's
then you
true.
can go 40 feet if you wanted to,
Yeah.
which is I'd never go that high, especially here.
Yeah.
You know?
Seriously.
But so that's what I carry. And then, of course, we carry film equipment in there. So I've got to have a pack big enough for the film equipment. But, and then I always have like a rain something that I'm going to put on. But that's pretty much all I take for like my gear.
Okay.
As long as I've got my platform, that's another thing with my sticks.
Yeah.
As long as I've got that, I can really get up anywhere that I want. And I usually keep a gear strap for all my stuff, when I get up in the tree. But normally I don't like taking a whole lot of stuff. Sometimes I'll take binos, but around here we're such close quarter with our mountains that sometimes you don't even need them.
We've had this discussion before.
We have.
Multiple times because I didn't hunt for the longest time with binos because it was just like everything's so close quarters. Like if I can see the deer,
it depends.
Yeah, but now that like I've got some good quality Vortex binoculars, I'm like,
quality
all right,
helps.
These are sweet, and like I can actually see way better. And you can what I find is helpful is before when like I would see a deer out at 120 yards through the leaf, I just see movement.
Yeah.
Now I can see what it is a lot sooner, and I can kind of zoom in past the leaves and all the brush.
Sure.
And that's the thing that I'm like, okay, well, then, not that necessarily changes anything because that deer's kind of still doing what it's doing, but I get to mentally prepare a little bit better. Or like if it's a doe and I'm not hunting a doe that day, I may not pick up the bow. Yeah. But I'm gonna keep it close just in case something's behind it.
That's right.
But I don't know. You just can kind of like
got to be ready.
game plan it a little bit more by having that extra time. But I totally get the no binos thing.
Sure. And I agree with you. Like if you can see that far, take some binos. Yeah. But I know like some of my spots that I hunt, 40 yards. That's as far as you can really
like
see.
it's just that thick.
Yeah.
It's just that thick.
Yeah.
Like where this guy was at, it was that thick. I could see him through a peephole at like 70. And that was it.
Yeah.
So
brown.
Yeah, that's a different game.
That's a whole different
That's
deal.
also with you'd already scouted, found where their deer were.
That's right.
Had cameras, all the stuff.
Like if you're going into a spot and you're not that familiar, take some binos and look.
Yeah,
Like
for
start
sure.
looking because you're going to see stuff up at that point that you didn't on the ground, right?
Yep.
So I agree. Like there's certain situations.
Yeah, for sure.
One thing that I don't like though, and being in a saddle, you know how your bridge comes up,
Yeah.
and like you have your bino harness. I can't stand that.
I've
got to have my binos. Like
I've got a
in
cheat code for you.
Was it?
You carry a little like not nylon. What's that thin rope that you can burn and it kind of melts up and makes a nice knot?
Oh, just like
Paracord?
Paracord. There you go.
You just get
I
it.
thought it was nylon too. Well, paracord
Well,
is
it's
it
made
has
of
nylon.
nylon.
Yeah, I was gonna
well,
say.
so I'm right both times.
Yeah,
There you go.
I'm
Yeah,
just like,
you're
that's
good.
not it. But
Don't doubt yourself.
get a little paracord rope
Plunk it.
and tie those around one of the eye pieces of the binocular. So it's just like, don't wear it. It's gonna hurt your neck. That sucks.
Yeah.
But then you can loop it on your tether.
Oh,
So you just do a little, put the loop around it and feed the binocular through it and cinch it down.
Great idea.
And then you can move it up and down. So you can actually have it hanging like,
Yeah, it's just,
to your belly button right up against the tree,
and you can just
but then
pick it up.
slide it, pick it up and see it and then move it back.
There you go.
Genius.
That's the
There
way
you
to go.
go.
I do that with my
Look at
deer
this guy.
call, my binoculars, and my rangefinder.
Goodness.
Like it's
We've
all
gotta
just
talk more.
it's like strings. I look like a duck guy out there. I've got like
Yeah,
a
you
necklace with all this
got your
crud on
own.
it, and but it's all on the rope.
That's
And
a
you
great
just-
idea,
You
man.
just loop it and feed it through.
yeah, like
Gotcha.
simple.
That's
slip
called
knot.
a girth hitch.
Yeah, simple girth hitch. Whatever I call it a loop.
You're a big fan of the girth hitch. I get that.
There you go.
It's my favorite knot.
It's your favorite knot.
Yeah, that's
like it worked.
That's a quick pro tip for you there, because I'm with you. I've actually, man, it actually wasn't out of a saddle, but I blew up an arrow on a deer because the string slapped my bino harness.
Yep.
And I was on the ground as a funky position. I was shooting across my body more than I'd like to. I wasn't in proper archery stance at all, but I was on my knees, off one hip in the grass.
We got this one on video
Yeah,
too.
and
I was
it-
with
yeah.
them.
string
That's
slaps.
awesome.
You heard it slap, and then on the film you could see that arrow. I don't know if it broke when it hit it or if it was already messed up, but the arrow flight was terrible.
Yeah.
It
had
hit
no
that
chance.
deer, it snapped, and we trailed blood forever. And it was like, I think I shot way high,
Yeah.
and it, all that stuff.
Well,
but
and that's another thing too. You were saying you were shooting like in a weird position.
totally.
Most of the time you are, right? So
Yeah.
like with that's just where I come from with the bino harness. I'm just like, man, I always take mine off and put it in the pack.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But it's just not worth it.
Yeah, yeah.
You know?
Yeah, you don't want to cause problems for yourself
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
your
You know,
gear.
you got a 150 in front of you. Like I don't want that to happen.
Yeah, not
Right.
at all.
I want to ask you to go a little bit deeper on. You mentioned branch boss, and we've talked with Rustin before and Rusty about that. But
Great guy.
how do you use that when you're taking that in like day of the hunt? What are you thinking about when you've got that in your pack? When do you pull it out and start using it and set up a mock scrape or things
Sure.
like that?
Yeah. So I honestly, since I've started using it, I never go into the woods without it.
Okay.
I've got a designated bag with gel, spray, I mean everything in there. But when you're going out on public, especially, you're always going to be seeing new stuff. You're always going to be learning. If I see a scrape or something, I'm going to freshen it up with that. And you just never know when you're going to come across one like that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how I use it.
Okay.
You know, I'm always taking it because most of the time I use it.
Yeah.
You know,
Gotcha.
there's so many different ways to use that stuff.
Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah.
It is strong. I like, and that scent carries, and it's like sometimes I'll spray it and I'll be up in my stand or in my saddle or whatever that I'm hunting, and I can smell it
Oh yeah.
from the tree if I'm hunting over that spot.
And if you can smell it, the deer can definitely smell it.
Yeah.
Like, you know,
Mhm.
because our sense of smell sucks.
It's terrible
compared to the
yeah,
deer.
relative to deer.
Yeah. Have you used the gel on a branch?
I've got some. I mostly just take the spray with me.
Man, I'm gonna tell you, if you find, let's say you find a community scrape, you know, where they're hitting the branches, you see the leaves, you know, broken off and they're nibbling on them. Take some of that gel, rub it on there. That'll last for months, months and months and months. You won't have to touch it again. You go in there and, you know, freshen it up with the spray, but like you're still going to be able to smell that months later.
Yeah.
I'm just throwing that out there. Like if you don't want to go in there and
That's
refresh
wild.
it. I know it's crazy.
Do you shoot a expandable broadhead or a fixed blade?
Fixed.
Good question.
Why?
Fixed.
Why fixed?
Because when you hunt in the Ozarks, there's so much brush. Okay. And I have shot expandables in the past. But when you hit a branch, you never know where that thing's going to go.
Yep.
And I've had them, and I know they've upped them, and you know they're a lot better now, some of them. But when I've hit a shoulder, I just don't trust them. You know. So if I'm shooting a fixed blade, most of the time I'm shooting a single bevel, really cutting through. If I'm shooting through grass, I have confidence that it's going to make it through that brush
Yeah.
and hit that animal
Yeah.
where I'm aiming.
It's
Right.
good.
You know, I'm not going to spine it, or you know, it's not going to deflect.
Fly
or-
off. Go.
So I'm a fixed guy.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not hating on anyone that uses expandables. You hunt the way you want to hunt, but in my experience, old reliable.
Hey, one of these days, Kyle and I are going to have I think some guys from both camps. I don't know if it's going to be this season, but we're just going to let them go at it.
Yeah.
And I'm excited for that day.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a check station. I don't know our plan there.
Oh man.
But we Kyle's all the time sending me data for why.
Well, I just saw this the other day. I don't all the time. I'm a fixed blade guy myself.
Well,
Gotcha.
all the time, meaning over the years.
oh yeah.
At least, yeah.
I'm just a
sending
big
me
data guy. I'll send you stuff.
Yeah, updated
Like, hey, dude,
data
look at
on-
this. Look at this data. Man. Look at
on
this.
like, yeah. Here's, the expandables get found more and all of this stuff, and then but we both shoot fixed blade, just like a good solid. It's like 1.25 inch, 1.5 cutting diameter.
Yeah.
Solid, heavy, the deal.
Yeah.
With your exact thought, like it's brushy, it's steep. You have weird steep angles sometimes. Like you just want to know that you have a knife blade at the end of that thing.
Yes.
Like that's what it's going to do. But it is fun because then you'll have guys who come on and like, absolutely not. Like I want to shoot further and I want to shoot faster and all the deals, and they're deer killing machines.
And the thing is,
Sure.
I get like both sides. Like any given day, I could probably be convinced one way or the other.
Yeah.
The study that you were talking about just the other day was, I saw it on Instagram that
I probably saw the same thing.
National Deer Association,
Yeah.
they posted it, and it was like throw all the theories out. It's just like deer that get
Numbers.
deer that get recovered. It just happens more with mechanical, and it's like crap, man. And it's like a pretty good sample set. It's a lot of data over a lot of years. And there's always questions within that of like, okay, well, can you count that? Here's a caveat. These are some outliers, but at the end of the day, it's like recovered deer. It's hard to dispute, but I still really like the fixed blade. That's why I hunt with
I've
them.
got one question on that. Are they counting crossbows?
That's what I was going to ask too.
They have it split out.
Okay.
They have
All right.
compound and crossbows.
Okay,
and
that's
it was higher both with the mechanical.
So here's the deal with I'm speaking for me. I'm not speaking for anyone else. I started out using mechanicals.
Mhm.
Okay. The first 2 deer I shot, I never recovered them. No blood, no nothing. Never found them. That's when I made the switch.
Yeah.
I've recovered more deer with fixed. That's me.
Yeah.
I have more trust in them.
Yeah.
But
And
anyway,
And you were probably using a specific type of mechanical that, I don't know, maybe wasn't as
probably
good.
wasn't as good back then.
Yeah.
I'm sure they've gotten better, but that's okay. They've gotten better. That's great.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't know.
It's a great debate. I love
It is.
that.
It's just fun.
I'm gonna keep sharpening my fixed.
There you go.
So,
Yep. I want to hunt like an Indian, even if nothing else is what they would have used.
That's right.
Actually, nothing that we hunt with is what they were using.
No.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, we're
But
so
they
far
didn't
from that.
have expandable broadheads. That's
true.
for sure.
That is true.
100%. You're right.
All right.
Anyway, that's all I got on gear.
Well, we're gonna shift, move on to. I want to get to like just kind of main strategies, and I know we've covered some of that, but
Yeah.
before we go there, I gotta hear the story on this deer. We've got the deer out here, and we've teased it enough. If you're watching the cameras, you're like,
I
there's
got
some,
my water bottle in the way.
some
but-
antlers over here.
Yeah.
So let's go ahead and hear about this deer, because this is a public land giant for around here.
That's right.
And
Yeah,
like
he's-
this is for a lot of people, you may not ever see a deer this big on public, and two, like very few people kill deer this big on public. So let's hear about it.
Yeah, so this deer was actually the last deer that I had found last season. So he came around in that pre-rut time.
Mm-hmm.
I had been scouting some other deer, and then this one came along, and he was my most consistent. So I was like, okay, I'm going to go in there and try to hunt this one.
Here, pick it up real quick for the YouTube. We want people to see it.
Yeah,
There you go.
It's a big old Ozark buck.
That's right.
man, he's
Buckmasters.
almost touching there.
Yeah. And they're kind of chipped. If you look at that, it's kind of chipped. He
Yeah.
came out a little bit further, but just a super cool buck. He's only 14 inches wide. I think 14 and an eighth.
It just looks like a halo, like right around his head.
Yeah. Yeah. Just an awesome buck. Peyton said he, looked like he was probably 5.5 years
Yeah.
old. Big, mature buck, like
Right.
one that you want to harvest no matter where you're at. But after finding this deer, he was running one specific ridge. And that's another thing too. When you're hunting these big mature bucks, most of the time they're not running the tops of these ridges. A lot of people like to sit up on the tops, hunt the sides.
Mhm.
Hunt the sides of them. That's where they're going to be running. You'll find where the does run, a little bit farther from that, probably 10, 15 yards, that's where the mature bucks are running. Most of the time, they don't run the same trails. Well, anyway, so I had found this buck, and I sat, I don't know, probably 4 or 5 times, found out where he was bedding, which that's another thing, too. Mature bucks, they have multiple beds. Depending on the wind, depending on the sun, where it's at, especially in these hills, they'll find different facings to lay. Well, where I was hunting this buck, he was laying, he was in there probably twice a week, but he was laying on this facing, where was it at? It was facing east. And then I hunted on the west side of this spot, but I could only access it in a certain time during the middle of the day because I knew he wasn't there. I would see him come in and bed down, and then I'd have to wait until he got back up. So,
and you're seeing this on trail cams.
Yep, seeing this on trail cams.
So you're using that,
using the trail cameras.
Got it.
My mole trees that I've got, and so all that data compiled. He would walk right in front of the camera off the side of this one ridge. So I sat probably 20 yards from that camera, just looking down, using my thermals. And, some guys are thermal guys, some guys are wind guys. I'm kind of a mixture kind of guy. So I'd only hunt him when I had the right thermals, right wind, which was normally in the evenings. My thermals would be going down, but it was going away. And if I had a north wind, that's when I would hunt it.
Okay.
Because I know he would get up, his bed was like 80 yards from where I was putting in at. And then most of the time he would go down in this drainage, and then he'd loop back up and he would feed on these browse on the side of this ridge. That's what he was doing. And then I had a mock scrape with the branch boss, and every time he would stop, sniff it, rub his nose on it, and then he'd keep browsing. Well, it was, I can't remember the date, but he came in, like 5 minutes before dark. It was like that last feeding before it got dark. And I was up in the tree, and I barely had enough shooting light to get it done. But, man, I'm just trying to relive that day, but because it was awesome. But it was one of those where you can see the deer bedded.
Yeah.
It was just, this mountain, just mountain here, mountain there. You can see him, but there's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah.
So you're sitting in this tree just please, Lord, let this buck come by my tree today.
Get up and walk over here.
Right?
So you could see him the whole time?
I could see him. The leaves were off the tree at this point.
Wow. And real quick, sorry to
No, you're good.
go back. How long had you been following this deer? When did you first see him?
I got him probably the second week of October, if I'm remembering right.
Okay.
And then it was the end of October by the time.
Okay, so just a couple of weeks.
Yeah, a couple of weeks.
Okay.
It happened quick.
Yeah.
And that's when that whole transition, I had never had this buck on camera in that area. And then boom,
Yeah, he was here.
He was there. He had made that transition, and that's where he was living at the time.
Gotcha. Okay.
And bucks make that change,
Yeah.
so much you just never know.
So you're up in the tree. You can see this guy.
I can see him.
Bedded. That's awesome.
My heart is beating out of my chest, and take it. This was the smallest deer that I was hunting out there,
Crazy.
Which is nuts. But that just shows you what the genetics were out there.
Yeah.
But seeing him in person, I was just like, I'm sending this arrow.
Yeah.
I mean, 8 days out of the week, But anyway, he comes up out of that drainage, and then right in front of me, like he had done before, and that was it. It was crazy, man.
He came up out of the drainage. Did he? How far did he walk from you?
It was about 20.
20.
Yeah.
So he came in pretty close.
Oh no, it was close. Well, had to be.
Yeah.
I was on the side of that ridge, but where he came in, I was a good 35 feet probably, from him, where he was at, because I was 20 up in the tree. It tapered down. It was still a hard shot.
Yeah.
But, it was, I don't know, man. Those times, I almost black out
Yeah.
when that happens. And my brain's just like, because the adrenaline dump.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
But then after that, you're just like, oh my gosh, thank you, Lord. Like,
Yeah.
you work so hard for
Mhm.
it. But those are the times that, like, all those years that, I hadn't killed one on public. That's what makes it worth it.
Mm-hmm.
And, you work your way up and consistency.
Mm-hmm.
But that's how it went down, man.
So did you know right away, like, oh man, I made a good shot? Were you nervous? Like, because you're right. Like the adrenaline hits you, and it's just kind of all blurry, and you black out a little bit. Some pieces you can grasp and remember. Did you know, boom, like that deer's done for, or is there any part of you that's like, did I see that right? Did that happen right? Like,
I'm always like that.
Okay.
I'm always like, did I make a good shot? Because you're just so. I'm not even like, when I make the shot, I'm not even excited yet. I'm just like trying to analyze everything in my mind, kind of deal. I've done that on every deer.
Mm-hmm.
You let it fly, and you're just like, did I see it right? Did it go through right? So I wasn't even like excited at first, but then, once you see them, though, you see the blood and all that. That's when I get it. That's when I get excited.
Yeah.
But I've just had too many things happen before.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I've got to see them.
Yeah, I need this to happen
Exactly.
right in front of me.
That's right. So anyway, that's how it went down.
Heck yeah.
And, it's just hard work and consistency, and that's pretty much all it is.
Yeah.
Learning. But I know, like, for me, it's just such a strong passion. It's like when I played ball and I had to quit playing ball, I had to find something else, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is what I think about every day, hopefully not in a bad way, but
Yeah.
this is kind of what I live for. Is just hunting these animals. But now, he's gonna be a memory, forever on my wall until I'm dead. So
Yeah,
it's great.
absolutely, man. That's cool. That's a really cool story. It's a unique hunt.
It's a beautiful deer too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Well, and it wasn't that long of a story though, but it was so eventful.
Right.
So, you don't have to have years of
Yeah.
stuff for, with a deer.
The history.
Pictures.
I feel like that's like a lot of the stories you hear is like, man, I've been hunting this deer for 6 years.
Yeah.
It was finally the day he messed up. And you're like, that's awesome. Like, I love those stories too, but it doesn't always have to happen like that.
No. It can happen quick.
Oh yeah,
a couple weeks.
Happen first sit too. Yeah. You kind of demystify for some people, and I do appreciate it. Of like, you don't have to be. You do hear those stories, and it's because they're great.
They're awesome stories.
You love the story of
They're
life.
awesome stories.
I heard same deer for years, but yeah, it's like I found this deer in mid-October, and I had him by the end of October. You're like, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Big deer, you found it. You got to go in and play the game.
Great. It's way less stressful that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Oh, some of the deer that make me the most sick are the ones that I have on camera year after year that I just can't get a hold of.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's like they're out there.
Oh man, I've got a couple.
Can't find
I've
them.
got a couple that are just like, man, hopefully, hopefully it ends one day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then I've had it too, though, where those end, and then you're kind of sad because it ended, and you don't, you can't look forward to seeing them on camera anymore.
Yeah,
That's true.
But
So going into this season, we're already in it, but going deeper into it, I know you've got some deer on camera, some target bucks that you're chasing after.
Yeah.
You don't have to hold that the whole time, man.
appreciate it. I'm gonna set him down right
Get
there.
a couch buddy over there.
There we go. Getting lonely over here.
So you've got some target bucks. You've obviously got some strategies. I kind of just want to hear from you, if you don't mind sharing, like, what are some of your strategies that you're going to put in play this year to target some of the deer that you're chasing after on public?
Yeah, for sure. So, what I'm doing this year, a lot of life changes, right? A lot of us are workers. Like, we only have a certain amount of time to hunt, right? So my thing is, like, when I go hunt, after you're working, you get some time off. I'm not hunting spots if it's not the right setting, though, right? So I'm a big thermals and wind guy. I say wind, not so much wind, thermals, especially in the mountains. But if I don't have the right thermals and a little bit wind direction, I'm probably not going to hunt a certain deer. That's why I try to have multiple deer to go hunt, so that I can have at least one that I can go hunt on those days.
Yeah.
but I'm not going to chance it, and that's my personal decision. I'm not going to go chance it and blowing a deer out and letting him know that I'm there, because it's going to mess me up for later.
Mm-hmm.
Like once he knows I'm in there, he knows.
Mhm.
Like especially a mature buck, right? So I know, like that buck that I sat for in Rogers a couple years ago, that big one, I sat twice, but every time I would not sit, and that was at the end of October. I had pictures of him since summer, and then season started. I only sat twice
Mhm.
because it was only right twice.
Yeah.
And then I got it done. I don't think hunting just to hunt a spot is necessarily good if you're trying to hunt big mature bucks.
Yeah.
If you're just going in there to hunt and that's like the only time and that's the only spots you got, go for it. That's great. Like if
Yeah.
you're out there hunting, that's great. Is something going to bust you? More likely it's going to bust you. You're probably not going to have as much success that way.
Yeah.
But that's kind of how I hunt. I want to have multiple spots, but that's also why I spend all year
Mm-hmm.
trying to find those spots and setting those up and studying what wind I can use and how they travel. And so I spend 365 doing that.
Yeah.
But for someone that doesn't do that, they go and hunt, that's great.
Yeah.
But that's how I strategize with it.
Okay.
Like I'm only hunting if it's right.
Yeah. So this year you've got a couple spots that you're looking at. Because to me, thermals, like you've got morning thermals and you've got evening thermals, right?
Yes.
It's like there's not a lot of variation. Wind, that's like that could be coming out of
Well,
who knows where.
And in the mountains,
It all just swirls anyway.
It's called swirling wind all the time.
All the time.
Yeah.
Yes.
So for you're talking about you're a big thermals guy, and you only hunted 2 days up until like late October. Was that a combination of thermals and wind, or was that you were just like to me the thermals are consistent pretty much every day, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah, most of the time.
What goes into that? Like, oh man, there were only 2 days that were right for me.
So the 2 days that were right, when I killed him, the day that I killed him, it was right after a rain and it had cooled off.
Mhm.
But it was pushing my thermals up, and this was an urban spot, by the way, so it's different.
Okay.
But it was pushing it up towards the house, right? I had the wind and then the thermals. It was pulling it like into this funnel going back to the house. And then where I was hunting, it was all doe bedding. So I knew that I could sit on the edge of that property. Those deer were rolling in from a different property. All of my scent was being pushed up towards where people were normally anyway.
Mm.
I knew he wasn't gonna get me unless something freakish happened.
Yeah.
So I sat right on the edge of that property. He J-hooked in like big mature bucks do, trying to win things, and I shot him at 20 yards, and it was awesome.
Gotcha.
But the 2 times that I sat there, that's what the conditions were. So I felt comfortable, and I was more confident then, because
Yeah.
no matter where he came from, he wasn't going to get me.
Yeah.
So, and it's that chess game. You're playing a chess game with an animal like this. So, but that's how
gotcha.
that played out.
I gotcha. That makes sense. Yeah, because I'm like, man, thermals are like day and night, like same thing.
Yeah.
Well, I could see too, and depending on the wind, maybe not an urban setting, but if you have a really, really strong wind from one direction and you can play it in your favor, that's great. If it's light and inconsistent, that's when it swirls like crazy.
Yes.
The thermals on a strong day, that's going to really matter because swirling wind, like they could catch something at some point, but if it's swirling, it's not a consistent, like there's danger that way. It's just around. The thermals where they're going to get you because then it's dropping scent on them, and it's like, I know where that's coming from. That's coming from up the mountain or whatever.
Yep.
And they're not
that's
going
when
to
they
come up
look
the
at
mountain.
you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. They're like, hey, wait a second.
What's up? Yeah.
But yeah, that's
Your heart stops.
That's right.
Close your eyes.
and that's
Start
also
praying.
like exactly on public positioning where your stands at. Like when you're hunting ridges and stuff like that, am I going to hunt it low? Am I going to hunt it high?
Mhm.
There's so many different variables that go into that. But like if I'm rolling in and you're sitting low in the morning, where's your scent going to go when it starts heating up? It's going to carry up that ridge, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have deer traveling the side of that ridge, most likely if you're sitting low, they're going to get you
Mm-hmm.
most of the time. And of course, like the wind and everything, but your thermals are going to go that way.
Right.
That's guaranteed.
Yeah.
So
It's just science fact.
that's science fact. So most of the time in the morning, what are you doing? You're sitting high because that's where it's going to go. In the evenings, it's the opposite. You know, but it's just, and that's also, I feel like you can explain that to people, but that's also getting out there and seeing how deer react to that.
Yeah.
You know, because I'll tell you, man, I've been busted. I've been busted a lot.
Yeah.
And I don't care how much coverage you have. They're going to bust you if they
Yeah.
smell you.
Yeah.
That's just fact. So that's how I hunt the mountains.
Yeah.
So
Gotcha.
thermals.
That makes sense.
Thermals, man.
Thermals, man.
Yeah.
You're a
Learn
big
'em.
thermals guy.
Learn them.
It's funny how you know what I love, like part of the thing that I love about doing the podcast and talking to people is everyone has a different philosophy.
Yeah.
Everyone's got their own technique. Some people are like, you know, live or die on like wind. Some people live or die on thermals. Some people live or die on, you know, the moon phase, the topography, food source. Like everyone's got their own thing that they key in on, and so you can kind of always learn from talking to different people.
Sure.
And you're never ever going to like know it all.
Nope.
You just can't.
And that's the beauty about hunting. That's the beauty of it. You're
Well,
always learning.
Every creature's different.
Yep.
Makes it even more fun.
Yeah,
Yeah.
You're totally right.
Yep.
it does, man. It does.
Well, and too, you know, we're talking about mountain hunting. So like Midwestern, that's a little different too.
Yeah.
You know, flatland, you're hunting that differently. So
wind goes one direction.
exactly. So
It's easy up there.
Yeah, man, it's super easy up there.
it's easy.
Hey, my
Yeah.
friends in Kansas, y'all, I'm just playing with y'all.
Yeah.
What about some biggest lessons learned and biggest mistakes made?
Gotcha.
Hunting public.
Hunting public. Yeah. Biggest mistakes is probably just busting in there without looking at things. Like when I first started hunting public, you know, you walk on a trail and you're just like, oh, I want to go here. And you just bust up in there, but you're not looking at anything else really. That's one thing that, like, if you're new to it, as you're walking in, look at everything. Like if it takes you forever to get to your spot, great, but pay attention to everything like around you, because you're gonna miss something. You know, and that's when I first started. That's what I saw that I made huge mistakes at, was not paying attention to every little thing that I was walking by. Because you're gonna learn something new from everything. But that's probably the biggest thing on public. Just pay attention. Just study. Study. You're probably going to be mentally tired by the time you come out of there. But that's what I'd say the biggest thing is, just study. Look at everything.
I could see how that's easy to do, because you're like, man, I feel like I have studied, I've done the e-scouting. I've looked, like, there's this spot back here that's unique. I want to get to it. I want to check it out. And so it's like, I'm on a tightrope to that spot. And it's like, well, what are you walking by? Like, because you were was it this deer that was not that far off the road, or was that
it's like 300, if that.
300 yards off the road? It's like,
Yeah.
that's easy to walk by, because you're like, oh, there's no way. Like, I
Yep.
got to get deep back in here where these bucks are, and they're safe and they don't get pressured.
Or you find a pinch way back in there. You're like, man, I got to get to that point,
Right.
You know, but you're not looking at all the saddles and all the side ridges and drainage, like all this stuff that we have in the Ozark Mountains. You've got to look at it, because these deer are going to be traveling. I'm going to tell you, like, you'll have a game plan when you get in there. 99.999% of the time, it's not going to be that way. So just pay attention to everything while you're walking in there.
Yeah.
So, because your plan's probably going to change.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You just got to know it.
Now those mountains, it's like everything's a pinch point.
Oh,
Everything's a feature.
right?
So
And-
you've got to figure out what's dominant in that spot, in that
Exactly.
area that they're using to their advantage.
Yep. And that's the thing. There's so many of them. You just got to find the right ones, though, and the right times that they're using them.
For sure.
I love it, man.
It's good.
That's awesome.
I've got a quick call to action, if you don't mind.
Go for it, man. I love it.
If you listen to this episode and anything within this conversation helps you harvest a deer that you'd consider a trophy, if it's your first doe to a big buck, will you Instagram message us, or Instagram message Genuine Pursuit. I also want to see it too, so maybe do both.
Yeah, do
but
both.
one or the other.
We would love to
Instagram
see
message
it.
with your story. I just want to know, like, man, this helped me
Oh.
get to that. I think that'd be really cool.
That means
So,
the world.
Absolutely.
World
if that
to us.
happens and you're thinking, I actually heard something on the Ozark podcast about this. Oh, that's where I remembered. That's where I learned it. Let us know.
Yeah,
I would
let us
love to
know.
hear that story.
Those stories are cool.
They are.
That's all.
They're the
It's like
best.
every now and then when you get one, and you're like, man, that's awesome. Like that's
Yeah.
why we keep going, because it's
That's
just
right.
like we're learning, you're learning. It's just like a collective thing, and
Mhm.
if you can accelerate that learning curve for somebody else at the same time you're learning, it's like, man, we feel like we're all doing this together.
Exactly. And as the hunting community, we're a big family.
Yeah.
We're not against each other. Like, that we need to stick together, especially now.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we'd love to hear that, man.
Absolutely.
Love
Cool.
to hear it.
Well, Ethan, we appreciate you taking the time, coming over and
Thank
hanging
you.
out with us. Thanks for showing off this big deer. What a
Yeah, man.
stud.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for bringing it in my house. I wish I could keep it and put it on my wall, but I don't think my wife would let me.
I don't know if we get away with that
I don't
one.
think we would, and you would never let me have it. I know that. But man, it's been fun hanging out with you and getting to meet you. So
Appreciate it. Thanks, guys.